about the show. Gary the Rat. Starring Kelsey Grammer. Created and written by Mark Cullen and Rob Cullen.
People want the biggest rat on Wall Street.
Attorney Gary Andrews doesn't know why, but he recently metamorphosed into a fear-all 6-foot rat.
You bastard!
Some say his change might be karma for being such an ass.
You're dead, Ratman.
Until Gary figures out why he's like this, he has decided to try and function the best he can in a human world.
Cheese delivery, dude.
Outraged at his new appearance, Truman, a tenant in Gary's expensive apartment building, has hired exterminator Johnny Bugs to get rid of Gary for good.
Meow.
Gary Milford Andrews was born on February 21, 1956. He grew up in Westport, Connecticut with his mother, Evelyn, and his father, Milford. Gary went to J.D. Rockefeller Middle School in Westport, where he was a straight-A student. Gary went on to Choate Rosemary Hall in Wallingford, Connecticut for prep school, where his fascination with the law started to take hold. Gary was star of the Choate debate team and founded the Student Office for Legal Assistance. After graduating from Choate, Gary went to Dartmouth University, where he pursued the double major of political science and economics. In the spring of Gary's senior year, Gary's father Milford passed away. The death of Gary's father was particularly difficult on Gary's mother Evelyn, who began to, and still does, suffer from various physical maladies. After graduating from Dartmouth with honors, Gary went to Harvard Law School. Gary excelled in litigation, and graduated at the top of his class. After graduation, Gary was recruited by every major law firm in the U.S. Gary decided on the New York firm of Harrison Faust Coleman Fino and Brunell to begin his litigating career. Gary quickly became partner at the firm and has had unprecedented success as a Wall Street attorney. He enjoys collecting art and Italian furniture, going to Broadway shows, and eating his way through New York's finest restaurants. Johnny Horatio Bugs was born June 22, 1970, in Brooklyn, New York. He is the only son of Marie and Petey Clams Casino Bugs. Johnny attended PS 119 in Brooklyn for 5 years, but had a difficult time with things like numbers and letters. After PS 119, Johnny went to the Bayside School for Gifted Children. He was only able to attend the school for 1 year, as it was, mysteriously, burned to the ground before final exams. After Bayside, Johnny began to spend time with his father, who owned a local rodent extermination business. For the first time in his life, Johnny was a quick learner, and soon began to work for his father full-time. Johnny became a rodent's worst nightmare, often killing thousands of them a week. Then after only 94 tries, Johnny received his state extermination license, and took over his father's business. Johnny's parents then moved to Miami Beach, leaving him a small shed where he could live and work from. Johnny turned the shed into his personal bug cave, where he lives with his cat Boots, and has dedicated himself to making the streets of New York rodent-free. Truman Theodore Pinksdale was born on November 17, 1957, in Danbury, Maine. Truman is the only son of Catherine and Hamilton Pinksdale. The Pinksdales amassed their family fortune in the locomotive and oil businesses. Truman was a silver spoon child from the very start. When he was 5 years old, Truman was given a train set for Christmas. The train set was not a typical one that circled the tree on Christmas morning. Rather, it was one that consisted 55 full-size cars that traveled from Maine to Michigan. Truman often traveled on this train, playing conductor and blowing the whistle every 10 seconds. Truman was never a very good student. Nor did he have to be. His father's position and wealth allowed Truman to sashay through high school, never amassing anything better than a C average. Truman, being a fragile and weak young man, often found himself being the butt of cruel school jokes. Once he was stripped naked after gym class, and tied to the field goal post on the football field. He was found later that evening by a janitorial worker, and rumor has it that his virginity was lost that night. After Hamilton Pinksdale donated a medical school, Truman was accepted to Yale University, where he studied business and economics. At Yale, Truman met his wife-to-be, Helen the Goose Down. Helena Goose Down, or Goes Down as she was affectionately called, was quite the active young lady in Yale. On their second date, Truman took Helena to a Yale football game. To his amazement, Helena had worked out a deal with the team, so that she and Truman could watch the game from the sidelines. As the team roared onto the field, each of the players gave Helena a long, deep kiss, whispering "Thanks for getting me my knee pads back," as they stormed onto the field. Tragedy struck Truman's life when his father Hamilton and mother Catherine were killed in a car crash just outside Danbury. On a vacation jaunt to their Manhattan apartment, their car had blown a tire and come to rest on a train track. With no servants to change the flat, Hamilton and his wife sat in the car and waited for help. As they waited into the night, a train flew across the tracks, demolishing the car and killing them both. The irony of the matter is that Truman still owned the train that caused his parents' death. After a mourning period, Truman married Helena and moved into his parents' Manhattan apartment. Truman lives off the huge trust that was left to him after his parents' death, and Helena has become somewhat of a philanthropist, dedicating her life to helping single fathers relieve stress from their lives by providing no-cost full-body massages with guaranteed release. Douglas Bud Sternberger was born July 15, 1973, in the small town of Siena, New York. Bud, as he is known, is the oldest of three brothers, born to Hilary and Michael Sternberger. Growing up in Siena, Bud was a typical middle-class kid. He did pretty well in school, had lots of friends, and mowed lawns in the community to make a couple bucks. Bud was destined for a very middle-class life. All of that changed on July 6, 1988. On that fateful summer day, Bud went down into the basement of his family's house, looking for a pair of pliers. Instead, he found his father's old record collection, collecting dust in the corner. The album covers immediately got Bud's attention. Psychedelic colors with titles like Anthem of the Sun, Aoxymoxoa, American Beauty, Wake of the Flood, and Blues for Allah. Bud had discovered the Grateful Dead. Bud immediately took to the words and music on the albums, spending hours of his days listening and reflecting. This music touched Bud so deeply that he would be changed forever. A month after his discovery, Bud would leave his home in Siena forever. The Dead were playing a show in Albany, and Bud packed some clothes, hitched a ride, and headed for the show. When Bud arrived, he knew he was home. Colorful people, none of whom were in a hurry, welcomed Bud with open arms. They gave him food, drink, show tickets, and drugs. Lots of drugs. Bud took to acid like a bee takes to honey. Brown, white, blue, or red, it didn't matter. Bud would eat a tab of anything if he believed it would get him closer to God and Jerry. Little did he know that they were one and the same. Bud became a prince in the Deadhead scene, traveling the country with people he met at the shows, and discovering himself through modern chemistry. Bud's acid and marijuana use grew so extreme that people would often find him naked in the woods, eating termites and yelling "Jethro Tull is not a man." Bud's drug use was spiraling out of control. He even lost the ability to speak for several months. But just as Bud was hitting bottom, something unbelievable happened. On August 9, 1995, Jerry Garcia died. This rocked Bud's world. He thought, if Jerry is God and Jerry is dead, then God is dead and Jerry is me. Bud blacked out from this thought, and woke up naked in a Dairy Queen. The next day, Bud got on a bus, and went home. Bud moved back in with his parents, who had moved closer to Manhattan. They would let him live in their basement, as long as he could pay rent. Bud got a delivery job at the old cheese shop in the city, where he earns $5.25 an hour, plus tips. Bud still smokes a little herb now and then. He says it helps him to think, and that it keeps the squirrels from staring at him. Boots the cat, born March 22, 1995, was destined for greatness. Coming from a long line of champion Persians, Boots spent most of his time in the care of the finest groomers and trainers. Everything was perfect in his life, until the opening ceremonies of the Whiskas Cat Show in New York City. An exposed piece had been written in Modern Feline, describing how Boots' mother Delilah had been impregnated during an affair with a troublemaking alley cat named Bobo. The story went on to say that Delilah, not wanting to suffer the slings and arrows of the cat world, kept quiet about the affair, and went to South America to have her baby. After a year, Delilah returned with her kitten Boots, and proudly displayed him as the next purebred champion. Boots was taken in by the purebred community, and was hailed as their next great champion. The only problem was that Boots was no purebred at all. This story came to light because Boots' father Bobo had become a nip addict, and was borrowing money from everywhere to feed his addiction. With no way out, Bobo agreed to sell his story of his affair with Delilah, just as his son was getting ready for the Whiskas Championships. With this news, Boots was banned from the Whiskas and every other championship. He was shunned by his fellow Persians, who even went so far as to call him a mutt. Delilah was banished from the cat community, and was forced to move to Thailand. With no one and nothing, Boots turned to the streets. He was living paw to mouth, picking up odd jobs here and there to support himself. Then one day, while cornering a rat in an alley that would become his dinner, he met Johnny Bugs. Johnny took an instant liking to Boots, and invited him to stay with him in his bug cave. Boots agreed, and the two have been inseparable ever since. Boots now helps Johnny with his extermination business, and Johnny helps Boots get past the painful memories of what could have been.